According to the National Treasury's own forecast, the Youth Wage Subsidy would benefit a young South African job seeker every 3.5 minutes. The policy was originally proposed in Parliament in October 2009 and formally announced by President Jacob Zuma on the 11th of February 2010. The DA plans to march over job losses to COSATU's headquarters today. The COSATU House said time now to delve into the pros and cons of the Youth Wage Subsidy. John Botha, General Manager for PMI, joins us at the Power Lunch Desk. Good to have you with us, John, today. Firstly, let's get your view. Where do you stand with regards to the youth wage subsidy, whether it would be a good thing or bad thing for South Africa?
There's no doubt that it will be a good thing. I think, as with most of these policies, it's got to be very effectively managed. You know, there's a very real fear that companies will exit their older employees in favor of those below the age of 29. And obviously trade unions are very concerned that the displacement of older workers would be an unfair and unacceptable practice. However, having said that, we're all very aware of the current unemployment challenges. We're very aware that there's short, medium and long-term strategies that are required. So I think what's really necessary is to actually start looking at implementing this.
What are the issues that need to be ironed out? If you had to drill into them, you mentioned the issue around possible displacement of older workers. Is that a legitimate fear, or is there space for everyone if you just create a more productive workforce overall?
Look, it is a legitimate fear, but you know, SARS have proven themselves to be very, very competent in respect of the auditing of various types of levies. For example, the learnership, tax rebates, etc. So, you know, the fear of trade unions that older people would be displaced can be easily managed by annual returns in terms of the youth employed and at the same time potential turnover of older staff in respect of that. When I say older, obviously older than 29. So there are concerns. I think one of the big challenges, and I think this is where COSATU are coming from. I know as we speak, the march is taking place. Things aren't going that well. But certainly, I think a concern between business and labour that's shared by both parties is government has a number of national strategies. We've got the National Development Plan, the New Growth Path, the National Skills Strategy. There are probably 6 or 7 different strategies linked to employment creation. And I think what COSATU are effectively saying is saying, guys, we need an integrated, coherent strategy that can be driven synergistically, but then we need to balance that against employee rights.
John, you have been involved with this in NEDLAC. It seems to the outsider that these positions are set in cement. NEDLAC is supposed to be a forum where negotiating is done, some kind of consensus to take to government for policy purposes, but it does seem that they are rigid. I mean, COSATU, you can't blame them. They are there to protect their members. Their membership is declining. It has been steadily for a long time. Do they have that power to continue, in effect, boycotting the solution?
I think they do have a lot of power. We've seen their power being wielded in many respects. I don't, however, believe that they're saying that the answer is a definitive no to the youth wage subsidy. I think what they are saying, though, is we need to take a step backwards and we need to look at an integrated human capital strategy, because we've got 4 or 5 ministries heading off in different directions, and I think they're concerned that in the speed and the urgency around the whole thing, I think they're concerned that worker rights are going to take a knock.
Isn't the problem, though, that if you had to then take a step back, put your foot on the brake, you're losing time? I mean, surely just the concept of just having lots of good plans in place, yes, it does take time to come up with a comprehensive plan, but surely what about the lost time then as a result of that? Yes,
and I think that's the issue in question. You know, the reality is we need a very urgent short-term initiative, and there's not much going for employers at the moment. We've just finished off 2 of the labour amendments to the Labour Relations Bill and the BCA Bill. We're currently busy with the Equity Act and the Employment Services Bill. We look at the international trading pressures. I've heard you speaking to many of your colleagues. So the reality is, if you want employment to grow, there's got to be something in it for employers. And the possibility of having half your wage subsidised for up to 2 years
Do they see it as a kind of Trojan horse? You know, once we've got a wage subsidy for younger people coming into the market, well, then maybe that affects working conditions. It's easier to hire and fire, because that's one of the things that COSATU is worried about. Is your sense from the discussions that they see this as the opening of a door down a corridor they don't want to go?
It might very well be that, and obviously the whole aspect of unionisation in the modern world of work and growing atypical employment forms has resulted in them, as COSATU, taking a very negative view of what they call a 2-tier labour market. And effectively they're saying the subsidy is going to introduce your employees whom they've been fighting for their rights over many decades, and then a second tier of employees who potentially earn less and may be more vulnerable. But I think therein lies the trade-off between employment creation and then...
But has business been creative enough in saying, trust us, we will ensure that there won't be job losses as a result of this, but job gains?
Yeah, unfortunately negotiations haven't got to any substantive basis because there's a need to elevate it into a more integrated approach. I think the downside there is we need to do something immediately in the short term, and I think that's where COSATU are taking the heat right now.
But COSATU, I mean, just looking at what's taking place on Twitter, just the DA have now been fired upon by, there's been tear gas there, they've had to take off their blue shirts, the COSATU members have been very hostile towards this. It seems that everyone has a very strong opinion right now, and in the meantime we lose time once again in South Africa. What does the private sector need to do? Because as you said, are they being creative enough? Do they need to come to the party and come up with another plan if the wage subsidy plan falls by the wayside?
It also suggests that COSATU is intolerant of methods it uses itself when it wants to. And we haven't seen the pictures here, but from what you say, the sides are not meeting each other.
Yeah, look, I think it's a very unfortunate timing of events. I think we've delayed taking action on youth unemployment and unemployment in general, in my view, for far too long. You know, so to have a knee-jerk reaction now, and especially to have the DA marching, you know, on COSATU, in my view, is premature. I think COSATU have not closed the door. They've asked to raise the engagement to a higher level, to look at the NGP with Minister Patel, etc., Minister Manuel and Treasury. And I think that is going to take time. I think what has to happen, though, is someone's got to take strong leadership here. Business, labour and government, someone's got to stand, be courageous, and someone's got to
We need communication from government, firstly. I mean, surely the finance minister would be the right person to do that.
And in fact, the Treasury has already made its communication and its recommendation clear by saying, if you do this, we will create jobs. So they've said where they stand, but they need the backing of government as a whole.
Correct. I think we need strong leadership from all three parties, and that leadership has to make sure something happens very quickly. I don't think these types of marches are going to help in the particular process. Look at the toll issue. We rallied the troops very quickly because it became such a critical issue. In my view,
but isn't that a reason why the DA is feeling motivated? You know, if we can do this on the tolls, there's a new activism at work in the country. People are saying we can make a difference by protesting. Are you saying the DA shouldn't be protesting?
No, but what I'm saying is that it's a much broader issue that needs to be addressed than just the youth wage subsidy. Yes, it will give some relief in the short term, but I think there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed and be pulled together. And that is the issue at the moment.
Are there any figures that we have on the table in terms of how much government is prepared to put towards the youth wage subsidy? Who's going to get what? How would you qualify as a company for the subsidy?
The figure, I think, is 5 billion rand that's been set aside initially. You've got to be under the age of 29. In fact, if you're below the age of 24, I think we'd have a problem in that regard ourselves. But if you're under the age of 24, it's sort of a sliding scale. And as I said, up to half of the wage can be claimed.
But from which companies? I mean, who would qualify? Any company that comes out and says, I'm employing someone who's 28 years old and I qualify then for a subsidy.
You know, as with learnership tax rebates, you know, you'd have to make an annual submission to SARS with proof, you know, ID numbers, proof of payment, and then you would get a rebate off the back of those particular wage criteria. And it's for up to 2 years, as I say. So I think it's a very real incentive. It's very necessary. But I do think that it's going to require an elevation out of the NEDLAC process, probably between leaders, between business, labour and government, as with the toll issue, to actually get going.
Yep, an integrated plan towards job creation. That's pretty much what you're saying.
It's an integrated plan,
yeah,
correct.
We'll leave it at that for today. Thank you so much for coming through. John Botha, General Manager of PMI.